The Whispering Mountain by Joan Aiken, Chapter 14. Tom Dando, silent, absent, and broody from the poem that was growing inside him, and Tom Dando with the weight of that poem safely transferred to paper were two very different people. Now that he had slept and woken again and knew that his poem was still just as good as he had thought it when he wrote it down last time, he would not have changed places with the Tsar of all the Russians. "Stir your shaggy stumps, Galahad, my little one," he shouted joyfully, when he had clipped all pages of his poem together with mountain ash clothes pegs and made sure that Ribaldi was securely tucked into one of the bunks. "Terrible old night it is, indeed, but at least the wind is behind us. See if you can't go a bit faster than that wind. Me old settle." Galahad, fresh from a day's rest, required no urging. Striking sparks from stones with his great hairy hooves, he thundered along, powerful as a locomotive engine. Puffing Billy, and a great deal faster, his mane streamed behind like cirrus cloud. He neighed and snorted and blew out long jets of steam, while the wagon swayed, rattling from side to side. Luckily, Ribaldi had fallen into a deep sleep, or he might have been alarmed at this helter-skelter method of covering the ground. Tom Dando, seated on the box with an old blanket flung round him, sang at the top of his powerful tenor voice every song and hymn he could remember, from the March of the Men of Harlech, Cumronda, Heiferdal, and all through the night. When his memory gave out, he started over again, or set words from his poem to tunes of his own invention, while Galahad whinnied in response and galloped even faster, and all the time the wind howled furiously behind them, and the ribbons of snow flew after them. But the way ahead was still clear enough. They were just keeping abreast of the blizzard. "Not so nice for anybody traveling behind us, though, I'm thinking," said Tom cheerfully, and he sang, "The cold wind does blow, and we have got snow, and what will the robin do now, poor thing? He'll sit in the cropper until he's discovered and tie his trousers with string, poor thing. Careful with the feet, Galahad, my little gaffer, and keep a bit of a lookout for the old snowdrifts, just the same, is it?" Now that Tom was guiding Galahad, they went by the most direct route, and so covered the distance to Nant Agardau in less than 1/3 of the time it had taken them in the opposite direction. About an hour before dawn, they had reached the Boar's Head Inn, and Tom was banging on its shutters and demanding to know if the Prince of Wales was staying in the town. "Dear, dear, what a time to come rousing honest folk," said Mr. Davy Thomas, crossly opening up. "Gracious to goodness, is it you then, Mr. Dando, and what can I be doing for you? Is Prince Deo under your roof, friend? Or if not, can you tell me where I can be laying hands on him? Urgent it is to have a speech with him, see." "Staying here he was," said Mr. Thomas fretfully, "but delirious from a wound and most peculiar behaviour with it. Asked for a bowl of pickles with a dram of wine in it after midnight, and then nothing would serve but he must go out, he and that gaggle of young rapscallions from Pennygraph. To look for one of them was lost. Lame as a three-legged chair he was with his wound, and the boys obliged to carry him on 2 benches. And Dr. Jenkins most put out. 'No responsibility do I take if your highness will be having your death by this,' he says. 'Oh, go dive in one of your own possets, man,' says the prince, and off he goes. Though, dear knows, you'd think he'd not miss one boy out of the lot that's been eating me out of house and home." "Lost boy?" said Tom. "Fancy that. Where would he be lost then, and why hunt for him at such an hour of night? Off to the Devil's Leap Cave they were going. But what I say is, no sense in looking for young scamps that wish to cheat the town of its money by sneaking in at night without paying their 6pence. Leave them find their own way out, and a lesson in honest behaviour, I hope. Devil's Leap Cave. Much obliged to you, Mr. Thomas, my little one, and I will just be stepping along the way then." "Oh, no trouble," said Mr. Thomas, "for poets bring good custom to inns, and one must be civil to them." Then, as it was no use going back to bed, he stomped indoors to scrub the tankards. Tom drove on through the town and straight into Devil's Leap, ante-cave, which he found lit by dozens of candles but empty. Dismounting, for the next cave was lower and would not accommodate the wagon, he rubbed Galahad dry and gave him his blanket and nose-bag, glanced inside to make sure Ribaldi was asleep and the precious poem safe, and then proceeded on foot to the inner cave, where he could hear somebody whistling. When Tom reached the Devil's Leap cave itself and looked down into the great bowl, he perceived a solitary man lying on a sort of couch composed of 2 benches near the edge of the central wall. From the benches and the fact that his leg was bandaged, Tom guessed this person to be the Prince of Wales, so he made his way down until he was close enough and bid him a civil good morning. "And a good morn to ye too, sir, whoe'er ye be," the prince replied, ceasing to whistle. "Have ye by chance observed a ween laddies roaming about ayont this ill-fared cavern?" Tom regretted that he had not, but added, "Glad I will be to go in search of them, if your worship wishes." "Oh, no," replied the prince peevishly. "'Tis best they should gae on with searching for the lad that's lost, but 'tis unco wherefore work waiting here for aye and thither to turn up sin. I can only stoit about, say dot, and gae on." "I suppose you would not hae the time to sit down and have a crack with me?" Nothing could have suited Tom's purpose better. He sat down on the rock and, without pausing a moment, launched into the whole tale of the harp of Terra II, from its earliest origins to the present day. Some of this tale, of course, Prince David had heard before from Owen, but much of it was new to him, and such was Tom's skill as a narrator that he listened to the whole in silent amazement, only occasionally murmuring, "Losh!" or "Weel, who'd have thought that?" "So you see, your Highness," Tom ended, "there is a proper scoundrel, that Marquis of Malin, and causing a lot of trouble and inconvenience to many innocent persons." "Och, mercy, yes, the first loon!" exclaimed Prince David. "I'm fashed to think I ever agreed to visit the wretch, but who was I to ken he was sic a black-hearted freebooter? But he and his Joes shall be clapped in prison as soon as ever the morn's a morn has done it. On the word of David, Jamie, Charlie, Niddy, Geordie, Harry, Dick, Tudor, Stewart, I'll order the prosecutor Fuscum to make the arrest afore breakfast. Maybe you'd wish to gang back with yon official to Castle Malin directly?" "I'm thinking that might not be a bad notion," Tom agreed. "But not too good the old weather just now, see? Go and have a look, I will." He came back shaking his head. "Blowing harder than Gabriel's trumpet it is, and enough snow already down to bury a whale, and as much more to follow. No one will get back to Carmalin yet awhile, I am thinking." "Hoot toot, there's a pity," said the prince. "I hope your lassie wasna come to harm at the hands of yon villain in the meantime." "Oh, as to that," said Tom Dando comfortably, "fine sense my daughter Erebus has, and I'm thinking she can take care of herself." "Then," said the prince, "sit ye down again, man, and make yourself comfortable. Tell me mair anat yon harp at Terra II. Gin it disna belong to Lord Malin, may the deil fly away with him, nor yon brither Ianto, aye, mercy's name, who maun be the rich owner?" "Indeed," said Tom Dando modestly, "I'm thinking I am." "Dear sakes of a!" cried the prince, thoroughly startled. "Say ye so? Expound yon riddle, man." "Simple it is," Tom Dando said. "Miss Tegwin Jones, to whom the monks returned the harp in exchange for a couple of tons of chilibane liniment, was the direct descendant of Terra II, and she was my grandmother. Mrs. Davy Dando she became. Fine old lady she was when I knew her, and could cure a sheep of the scrapes quick as kiss your hand." "Ah, oh," said the prince, "but if the harp was yours all along, man, where's me? Why did you no lay claim to it?" "Better things I had to do," Tom Dando said, "than join in a lot of clack over an old harp, and me with my poem to write." "Poem? Are ye a poet? Fine, I'd like to hear some of your verses, for I love a good poem, a'most as much as a good hunt. exclaimed Prince David, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. Tom needed no further encouragement. He began reciting The King at Caerleon, which Prince David heard with extreme delight. "Man," cried Tom. Man, he cried when Tom paused for breath. "Yon are the noblest lines I ha' heard this 12 months and more." "Indeed, I'm thinking so too," agreed Tom. "If I do never pen another line, there is something the world will have to remember Tom Dando by." From talking poetry, the two men presently moved on to swapping songs, and then it was not long before they were singing, or rather shouting, duets, for the prince had a baritone as powerful as Tom's tenor, and the resonance of the cave made it irresistible to sing as loud as they possibly could. A considerable amount of time passed in this manner. They had just worked their way through Chevy Chase when Tom Dando observed, with some surprise, that they were not alone. The prince, who sang with eyes tight shut, had not noticed, so Tom respectfully plucked his velvet sleeve to acquaint him to the fact that a small fur-capped, grey-bearded, untidily dressed stranger was perched near them on the lip of rock, listening to their song with an expression of the most rapt and lively pleasure. "Oh, excuse me, your highness," Tom said, "but would this be the person that your highness's people are searching for by here?" Prince David opened his eyes. "Losh, no," he said in surprise. "I never laid eyes on yon wee callant in my life before, but man, that harp he's lugging on his back. Could yon be the harp that all this clam-jammery's been about?" "Indeed it might be," said Tom. Very civilly he addressed the small man. "Please forgive the liberty, friend, but might I cast an eye over that harp of yours for a short moment?" And he held out his hand. Owen and the tribe of Yehemelech would have been amazed, for Abipal, instead of biting, kicking, and gnashing his teeth, made not the least resistance or objection, but sat watching, eager and attentive, while Tom took the harp and ran his hand across the strings with the touch of a master. "Certain that's telling Terry to herself, though she has been tuned and fettled up sweeter than ever she was in Granny's day," Tom said. "Was it you put her in such good order?" Abipal nodded. "Then I do bow to you, friend," said Tom, and did. His fingers wandered over the strings again and found a sweet chiming tune, "The Bells of Aberystwyth." That's bonny," said the prince simply. Little Abipal seemed dumbstruck that such music could exist. He had fallen into a dream, rocking slowly to and fro. Every now and then he heaved a huge sigh, as if his heart were too big to be contained inside him. "Dinna gie o'er, man. Play us another tune while we wait for the lads to return with yon lost one," urged the prince, but Tom, who had almost forgotten under the influence of poetry and music that someone was missing, jumped up and said, "Better it would be indeed if we were to help hunt. Who might this lost boy be, and how did he come to enter the cave by night?" "Why," said the prince, "it's a canny brawn lad by name Owen Hughes, who helped carry me on the road here from yon forest Mahon. Why, he had to gang stravaging off into this unchancy spot then, good kins, but I guess 'twas some way connected with yon harp or terror too, whilk has thrown into a sick dickery-dookery. And a man say," he added handsomely, as Tom's fingers absently pulled out another enchanting strand of melody from the harp, "here's Prince Davy, Jamie, and all the rest of it, to their Stuart winna say, wasna worth the trouble." "Owen Hughes, eh? Dear poor lad," Tom Dando said, and had just handed the harp carefully back to Abipal, who still seemed bemused when several persons arrived upon the scene with dramatic suddenness. And we'll pause there.